Recording in progress.
All right, we'll try again. Good evening. This is the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission August meeting. Thank you for being with us. We're going to start with roll call. Elena, if you can lead us.
Vice Chair Eberly,
Here.
Commissioner Shea,
Here.
Commissioner Kraus,
Here.
Commissioner Savage,
Here.
Commissioner Stimler,
Here.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Causey. All right, you have 5 present, Vice Chair, sorry.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and open for public comment now. If anybody has anything to say about something that's not on the agenda
Yes,
tonight.
Maura Uman, please.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Maura Ullman. I'm a resident of Palo Alto, and I'm here today to speak about the recently released California Reparations Final Report. On June 29th, 2023, the task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans issued its final report to the California legislature. The final report surveyed the ongoing and compounding harms experienced by African Americans as a result of slavery and its lingering effects on American society today, and proposes a comprehensive reparations plan in satisfaction of the direction set forth by the legislature in Assembly Bill 3121, AB 3121, and enacted on September 30th, 2020, to establish the task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. Members of California's Black Reparation Task Force presented their historic 2-year report to state lawmakers in Sacramento. I'm here today to encourage the HRC to agendize a discussion on this first in the nation state slavery reparations 1,200-page report. The report details California's role in perpetuating discrimination against Black residents and suggests more than 100 ways to repair the harm in the realm of political, legal, health, financial, educational, cultural, environmental, social, and economic systems. I recently got to meet Ms. Yasmin Abdusami Oakley, the lead organizer for East Palo Alto for Reparations, a grassroots movement that has been conducting listening sessions and centering the voice of descendants to make their stories heard. Good timing. In conclusion, I am here to request that the HRC include in future agendas a study session on the final report. I am thrilled that Ms. Abdusami Oakley has offered to share information on the grassroots movement that she has developed in East Palo Alto and her willingness to provide Palo Alto with guidance and support as we begin our process. Thank you for the important work that you do. Thanks.
Thank you.
So can you take more comments or?
Yes. You can fill it out afterwards if you'd like.
Sure.
So you can go ahead, you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Sure, thank you. My name is Yasmin Abdusami Oakley. I am what I call a legacy East Palo Alton. I am a 3rd generation from a family in East Palo Alto. My family came to East Palo Alto from Detroit in 1960 before I was born, or at least my mother's side did. My family side is from Pittsburgh, California, and they have a similar story coming from Arkansas. So I am a descendant of persons who were enslaved and emancipated in the United States. And what I've been almost reintroduced to this heritage through my work with reparations. I am a small figure in the reparations movement. I just wanted to begin this conversation in East Palo Alto. Had started to pick up steam throughout the state because of the California Reparations Task Force. So what we do is we follow their work. We educate people and inform people about what reparations is according to the work of the task force. And we center descendants so that they can tell their story about how they came to California, about the successes they've had since coming to California, and also about the harms that they have experienced through discrimination. That work is not easy in East Palo Alto, although we have a very huge history of activism. African American people incorporated East Palo Alto. But those were many years ago, and now discussing a topic like reparations is very sensitive for some people. So we tackle that. We advocate for descendant Americans. We find that on this peninsula, it is very anti-Black. So we spend a lot of time centering descendants, and specifically descendants, as opposed to all Black people, but specifically descendants. So that is the work that we are doing. We're happy to bring Palo Alto into this conversation. Descendants from Palo Alto have a distinct history here in Palo Alto, where they were allowed to live, how they were allowed to participate, and that those stories deserve to be heard and centered. We would love your participation, but we are looking for descendants to lead that conversation in Palo Alto or wherever we are. So thank you. My email is reparationsforepa, the number 4, reparationsforepa@gmail.com. We're very interested in doing some listening sessions around the California Reparations Task Force. And we are also interested in promoting that people read the interim report as well as the final report that is done by the California Reparations Task Force. And I'm sure that even task force members would be willing to come to Palo Alto and speak in Palo Alto. We have the chairwoman, Camila Moore. I'm sure I'm running out of time. And but in the Bay, we have Dr. Amos Brown in San Francisco, and we also have Dr. Jovan Scott Lewis at UC Berkeley. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Just check online.
It's like we have one more in-person public comment too.
Wait.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Constance French. I'm a citizen of East Palo Alto, resident of East Palo Alto. And I'm very excited about reparations movement, repairing the harms. It's a wonderful thing. And so I'm just going to mention a few of the, so under the United Nations, there's like 5 elements of reparations. One is restitution. Another one is compensation. The third one is rehabilitation. The fourth one is satisfaction. That's like an apology, identification. Whoa, there were harms that have not been repaired that were promised and were taken back. Okay, and see, that's the history that needs to be taught. That satisfaction, which you can't really satisfy the horrendous things that have happened to us. And the last one is non-repetition. And that means you don't keep repeating the same things. You put in those structures that is not going to be repeated, you know, such as police brutality, you know, and you trace it back to the control of the descendants that came here from the African continent. And a lot of people are saying, what, we gave you affirmative action, or we don't owe you, we didn't do anything. It's, Malcolm says, it's like, when you benefit from your father's estate, you owe the debts of your father's estate. When we were beaten in Jim Crow and all of that, people came over and were given land and opportunities, group after group after group. So part of it is learning. It's a big 1,080-page report, but the summary is like 75 pages, something like that. And it's thorough. It's excellent scholarship and history. And everyone should read it and know it. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that you do allow descendants to lead a movement and share with you the harms from today, you know, redlining and all of that crazy stuff that was going on that our elders had to deal with directly from our position as 3/5 of human being. Nobody else was given that. We were given 3/5 of a human being, and all the policies after that kept that going. You know, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments, any online?
I don't see any, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And we,
How about the woman in the back?
okay, our next order of business then is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting from June 8th. Elena, do you take the vote or do I call commissioners me? Okay, thank you. All right, let's start. I'm gonna go around the table. Easiest for me.
I move to approve.
And I
Oh, sorry,
second.
yes.
Right.
So commission, can we pull it up? It's been a while. I missed the last meeting. And I usually don't lead. Do we need to pull it up on the screen or no? Does Commissioner Savage move to approve and Commissioner Krause second it? All right, so we'll take a vote. Commissioner Savage,
Aye.
Commissioner Krause,
Aye.
Commissioner Shea,
Shane. Aye.
and Commissioner Stimler?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Eberly, aye. So the motion is passed. 5-0. Okay, next one, we have somebody here to present for us. It's good. Angelina, if you may come up. Thank you. We're going to have a presentation of the draft Frontline Communities Report, which is a report on the impact of climate on vulnerable communities here in Palo Alto. And the presentation is by the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition. They've come to us previously and they've been working on a report, and Angelina Roche or Roche? Roche is here to present. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Angelina, you're going to present to us and then we'll go around and make, comments and ask any questions that we might have. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you. It's all you. I'm sorry.
I think Angelina, oh, you have the presentation, right?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a Frontline Communities Report. My name is Angelina Roche, and I'm a senior at Gunn. The rest of my team had some last minute things pop up,
unexpectedly, so they couldn't make it. Nevertheless, I will do my best to present our report and answer your questions. We are here on behalf of the 350 Silicon Valley Palo Alto Climate Team and the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition. And next, we're going to explain a little bit more about our mission and goals. Next slide. The real motivation behind this report was that we are all starting to see more and more the effects of climate change. It's global. It's affecting everyone. It is also local. It's affecting us here. It is intersectional. It affects everyone differently. It is affecting some of us now, and it is going to affect all of us soon. Because of that, we wanted to emphasize that we know many of us don't currently feel the effects of climate change. We know that Palo Alto does have programs in place to help those already experiencing the worst of climate change, such as those who might be historically disadvantaged or lower income. Next slide. With
Just a little bit, sorry, I have a slide, ready that had the report, but I can now bring up the slideshow that doesn't.
all right, yeah, no problem. No problem.
And could you speak a little louder?
For sure. Sorry about that. No problem.
Angelina,
How long have you been working on this report?
I think since last November.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are the other students also seniors at Gunn?
We have one senior at Gunn. One of them is flying to college right now. And we have an adult working from 350 Silicon Valley team.
I had it emailed to me as a PDF. See that one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Minka, should we take a little break? You know how, or- okay. All right.
Should we turn it? Can you see it on that?
If you feel more comfortable like doing it in 5 or 10 minutes, we can go to agenda item number 3 and come back, because we don't want you to feel stressed.
Yes. I was just going to ask if we could change the order of the agenda. So, okay. Let's move.
That's me, so now I have to stress. Okay. So, commission members, I was sent an email from Samina Sundus. She's with the American Muslim Voice. She wasn't able to be here tonight as she's recovering from surgery. Samina, for I think 11 years now, has been hosting a peace picnic and prayer service on King Plaza, which is right in front of City Hall. And it's a non-denominational, non-religious event, except for the prayer service. I just mean it's non-denominational prayer service that is an attempt to bring community members together to join each other in a meal, and to celebrate the community with each other. Let me get my notes from her and I could read it.
Just to clarify, this is actually agenda item AA4, not
Okay.
3.
Let me get it. So let me read it for you. So, yes. So starting in 9/11, 2011, they started hosting this with the Bay Area Muslim community as an uplifting and spiritual gathering. In the beginning, there was over 800 people. Their goal in this is, again, to bring the community together to honor the victims, the first responders, the victims' families. And the Peace Picnic evolved from annual candlelight vigils that they have. So they have asked the HRC to sponsor the event. The HRC doesn't sponsor the HRC because that in city language means something else. So this is an attempt to ask the HRC to be in support of the event. So she has a flyer. It says with the sponsorship of and with the support of. The HRC has supported this event many years. I'm not sure all of the 11 years, but many of the years the HRC has been a sponsor of the event. There's been HRC speakers, that have come in the past. But this year, what she's asking for is just permission to put the HRC's name on the flyer that just says this event is with the support of the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission. It's on 9/11 in front of City Hall. And again, there are some speakers and there is a meal that you have together. And has anybody here been to, I haven't been in 10 or 11 years. Has anybody been recently?
Yeah, I've been to, it's a great organization, a great cause, great food, great friends. I totally support it.
Thank you. So I am just presenting this on behalf of Ms. Sundes, so I turn it back to the commission.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything to say before? I'm happy to make a motion for the HRC to support the Multi-Faith Peace Picnic and Prayer Service. And is that something that we need to put on the screen or no? The motion.
The motion can go on the screen. We often put the motions on the screen more as an attempt to make sure that we get it right as staff and that you see that what it specifically says. Sometimes it also helps to focus a really big issue. So you see what that motion is. So if Elena can just very easily write it or take it into the record after the meeting, that is fine, just to have a simple motion.
Yeah, I think this one is simple enough that I'm pretty positive Elena can do it
Still
without
trying to
it.
resource the other speaker.
Yes. So I will make a motion for the HRC to support the Multi-Faith Peace Picnic and Prayer Service that's happening on September 11th of this year. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Commissioner Krause seconds it. And we'll go ahead and vote again. Commissioner Savage?
Aye.
Commissioner Krause?
Aye.
Commissioner Shea?
Aye.
Commissioner Similar?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Eberly? Aye. So the motion passes again, 5-0. Thank you. Are we ready to go back to agenda item number 2? Yes, okay, great, Angelina. Thank you for bearing with us. So we'll go back to the Frontline Communities Report.
And so, with all of this understanding in place, we wanted to know how climate change is already impacting frontline communities, which we defined as populations that are already experiencing the negative impacts of climate change in order to identify gaps in current programs and develop solutions to address them. Next slide. Based on our background research, we identified 6 key populations that we aim to focus on. We wanted to focus on the unhoused, renters, small businesses, senior citizens, folks with disabilities, and outdoor workers. We did a little bit of background research on programs already in place for each of these 6 communities. And while there is a disproportionate amount of ways that Palo Alto is supporting them, there are substantial resources that you are already providing. We appreciate that, and we might be referencing those later on in the presentation. Next slide. Starting with the unhoused, we reach out to Downtown Streets, Mountain View, Life Moves, and the KSP. Of those organizations, we were only able to set up an interview with Downtown Streets. From our organization with Dave Callahan, we understood that Palo Alto hosts a very small number of homeless shelters. And even then, within these shelters, there's a restrictive limit on how long the residents can stay. Although we received more feedback on these shelters, without having met with the leaders from the shelters themselves, our findings would be biased. Yet outside of the shelters, we found that many of those living in mobile homes do not have access to health insurance, and thus any health issues caused by the climate becomes difficult to treat. Overall, we heard that there's a lack of communication regarding the existing resources available. Thus, we reached the following conclusions. Due to the lack of accessibility and long-term solutions, people choose to stay outside. Low-income residents staying in outdated homes will be affected at higher rates. Due to climate-related damage to homes, unhoused populations will increase, and ultimately, though grave, people will die. Next slide. We hope to conduct a few more interviews with some contacts before we finalize these conclusions and findings. But for now, we recommend to increase investment into unhoused resources. Existing resources depend on grants, yet with assured investment into the unhoused community, organizations can expand with more confidence. Streamline communication for mitigation initiatives. Diversifying modes of communications would be immensely helpful. Although there is a page for unhoused resources on the city website, having more physical directories may increase accessibility. Lastly, accessible initiatives independent of shelters without strict regulations should be led. Examples of this already being done are cooling centers at the library and sandbag distribution during flooding. Next slide. The next group we looked at were renters. 46% of Palo Alto citizens rent their homes or apartments. We reached out to individual renters and community organizers through the Palo Alto Renters Association to speak about their experience seeing their homes through the effects of climate change. One of the main topics renters spoke about was extreme weather, such as floods, poor air quality, storms, and heat waves. Many renters are older or have disabilities, making them more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. In interviews, we heard about 50 miles per hour winds hurting trees and homes during storms. In response to necessary repairs, landlords raised rents. Another renter, about 65 years old, had a puddle in their kitchen during the storm from a leaky roof. They received a very slow response from their landlord, and the repair person who eventually came showed up without the necessary equipment to fix the problem. We also heard multiple stories about the medical professionals for regular care who had trouble getting to apartments during floods. Regarding heat waves, many renters live in 100-plus-year-old buildings without AC, with walls that can become hot to the touch. One big concern for people was where to go during heat waves, especially for elderly renters. During heat waves, we found that people go to the grocery store to avoid the heat and discomfort. Next slide. When asked for input, renters gave the following recommendation. More city texting about extreme weather events in advance and as they happen. Or newsletters with updates. Renters say it's very difficult to navigate the local and non-local nonprofits, legal resources, and programs that are available because they're all dispersed and it takes time to know which resources apply to you and might best fit your situation. One other topic we interviewed renters about was electrification and more green sustainable home measures like solar power. One renter we spoke to had electric appliances, while the rest did not. None had solar panels. Most renters did not have the ability to change their appliances without the approval of or negotiating with their landlords. So the intersection of renters and electrification would likely go more through landlords than residents. Future investigation could go into speaking with landlords and about incentives for electrification in their buildings, but it isn't included in this report. Next slide. Next, we define small businesses, which are privately owned corporations or partnerships with fewer employees and revenue than regular-sized businesses. We reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, but we didn't end up getting a response. So instead, we went to visit the farmers market, where we interviewed 4 small businesses. These small businesses were not based in Palo Alto, but there were certainly common takeaways from the interviews. All businesses stated that the period of heavy rainfall earlier in the year severely changed their revenue for the worse. The owner of the Frolayne's flower shop told us that the rain damaged the growth of their flowers and they lost around $5,000, and that it becomes hard for him to provide for his family. Next slide. The biggest factor of these interviews, as mentioned before, was money. All the businesses knew that they couldn't change the weather, but instead had to be able to survive through it. Although we hadn't been able to interview small businesses located in Palo Alto, we can assume that they would have had a similar response. The best way to help small businesses would be to increase grant programs and to access financial resources. In doing this, it can help owners' families and help the businesses bounce back from major climate incidents. Next slide. This is a senior citizen segment. We reached out to both La Comida and Avenidas Village. Unfortunately, La Comida was not very responsive, but Avenidas Village passed the interview request along. We targeted Avenidas Village in particular because we had heard it was for people trying to age in place. We interviewed folks who wanted to age in place. They were also all longtime owners. Unfortunately, for the purposes of this project, none of them appeared to be low income, which would have been a good group to connect with. Additionally, only one had major mobility issues. That being the case, we believe that most of the seniors we interviewed aren't prototypical frontline community members, but they still had valuable insights. Moving forward, getting interviews with folks from La Comida or people who use Avenida services outside of Avenidas Village may get us closer to the prototypical frontline community member. Next slide. The first theme within these findings was apprehension of tree branches falling during the atmospheric rivers, both at home and while out and about. One person told us that a tree branch almost hit a car of a physical therapist making a house call. Another told us that more branches fell down in their neighbor's yard that couldn't fit in the city's compost bins. There was also apprehension about driving or walking while the trees were heavy with rain. This may be more damaging for senior citizens because they already have fewer excursions and less social connection to younger folks. Some folks walking or driving during this time, so there were overall fewer social outings and less exercise at this time. One couple dealt with the issue by walking at Stanford Shopping Center instead of nearby their house so that they wouldn't have to worry about tree branches falling on them. One person also mentioned that a recently deceased partner would have been willing to drive, but they themselves didn't drive around as much. Although there's always a shock around utility bills, water in particular, we want to point out 2 stories that we heard that stood out. One person said, "I choke every time I see it. It's prohibitive." She made sure to change her garden so that it was mostly rocks and sculptures in response. And another person had a very different perspective because she is physically disabled and she saw that messaging on her water bill and felt that it was talking down to her and not understanding her exact circumstance. She said, "I feel like I'm being pat on the head like good girl or bad girl, and there's no understanding of my personal situation and no actionable way to figure out how to reduce my water since I believe that I'm doing everything that I should be doing." On a smaller scale, most everyone noticed changes in their yard due to climate change. Multiple people have mentioned drought restrictions. They usually respond to it by changing to native or rock and sculpture gardens. One person mentioned that after the lifting of restrictions due to atmospheric river, that they might be able to grow a veggie garden for the first time ever. There are also multiple mentions of azaleas, in particular blooming earlier this year due to the atmospheric river. Also, there was some evidence of people having trouble breathing during the 2020 wildfires, but it was mostly people who already had asthma. Many of the people we interviewed ordered air purifiers during this time. Some of them had AC, but most of their houses are well insulated and double panned, so they didn't need to use their AC as much. One person with mobility issues needs their neighbors to open and close their windows and shades for them each day. We also found that many people set up appointments in advance to take care of trees before winter. One person, in fact, found their other house repair issues while taking care of trees and gutters. Lastly, one person expressed concerns about downsizing into Channing House if the smoke got bad enough that they got stuck living inside for months at a time. Next slide. Our recommendations based upon these interviews are as follows. We suggest paying particular attention to the safety needs of medical professionals making house calls because of the physical therapist whose car almost got hit, plus similar weather-related moving forward. Secondly, because of all the people apprehensive about going out underneath our canopy during the winter months, it may be useful to consider alternative activities that folks can do to get exercise and fresh air. That's the spirit behind the suggestion to find safe places for people to go on walks during the rainy season. We thought it was particularly clever of the couple who went walking at Stanford Shopping Center as an alternative during this time. Lastly, one of our interviewees had some pretty severe physical disabilities, and she had walked us through how frustrated she felt by the messaging and tone of her water bill. We just wanted to flag this point. Consider how water bill messaging may look to folks with physical disabilities. Although it would be hard to get into specifics here, we are happy to discuss this further or put you in contact with the interviewee if it interests you. As a reminder, all 6 Avenidas interviews are provided in depth in the appendix to give you more context on each person. Next slide. The folks with disabilities segment is still a work in progress. Some initial background research shows that folks with disabilities are 2 to 4 times more likely to die during an extreme weather event, likely require that their medicine be refrigerated, and may need electric medical assistive devices. And we also have listed some common disability categories. That is, as yet, very little research done on how climate change affects folks with disabilities. But since extreme weathers can be lethal, we thought it would be important to pursue this segment. Next slide. Ability Path has very generously offered to help us find folks to interview. We have successfully contacted their VP and provided a list of possible interview questions, but we need to reward some of them according to the feedback in order to move forward. Next slide. The last segment we hope to interview is outdoor workers. We have seen across this county this summer that outdoor workers do not have any legal protections when it comes to extreme heat, and multiple preventable heat deaths have occurred. Outdoor workers are some of the first to experience the effects of climate change because they are also exposed to the elements and are often still working in extreme weather. Many of them have also other vulnerabilities, such as being low income, immigrants, non-native English speakers. Next slide. We've had an introduction to the director of the Day Worker Center of Mountain View, who says that her workers are interested in this project. We'd like to assess how extreme weather affects the workday safety and sources of income after having a conversation with the director of the Day Worker Center about the proposed interview format and questions. Currently, the ball is in our court to move this forward. Next slide. Thank you so much for listening to our analysis of each of the 6 communities. While we definitely have some more work to do, this is our summary of our next steps. Essentially, we aim to spread the word. We want to add digestible summaries of this presentation to the different websites and newsletters. We also want to rally community support through print and social media. Both of these points serve the purpose of getting the local public engaged. We want to understand that not everyone has the time to get deeply involved in this or showing up to council or working on this in their free time as we do. But we want to make sure that they are aware of this in case any of them might be a part of the populations we do not often hear from, but need to hear from in order to see how we can best support them. We also aim to present to other city groups, including the City Council, the SCAP Ad Hoc Committee, utilities, and other groups. The point of this part is to reach the people who have the power to make the change that we have realized that we need to see in the city. They're also our allies. We know that all of them and all of you care deeply about our city. You are here to serve your people, and we want to make sure that we are collecting accurate information and are able to support you as you support our community. Next slide. Our very next step is to collect more data. We want to collaborate with utilities and the sustainability department on data gathering techniques. We mentioned this earlier, but we need to use our allies in the city in order to hear from the greater percent of the population. What this might look like is door-to-door canvassing, where we walk through residents through surveys. This might include focus groups where we might invite folks after door-to-door canvassing to come and meet with us and answer questions together in a small room. We might also use city networks such as newsletters in order to collect more survey data, and there might be other tools that we have not explored yet. All in all, we also aim to begin interviewing the folks in the categories that we haven't interviewed yet, and also to especially increase interviews of the unhoused individuals and small businesses. Next slide. With that, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your time and we appreciate any questions.
Thank you so much, Angelina. Thank you for presenting. We'll go ahead and I can go commissioner by commissioner, or if somebody already is ready to go with questions or comments, just let me know. Or Commissioner Savage, we'll go down the line.
Oh, I got it. Well, I can't help thinking that the groups that you've targeted are almost identical to we on the HRC with our issues. So you're in the right place.
So
I don't know. It was thorough. Thank you so much. You're very well spoken.
thank you.
And if something, if we could do something today, tomorrow, what is like your number one action item right now as we speak? And I just want to also bring up, I keep thinking about Maui and how climate change is affecting it right now. And, it's very real. So all the naysayers who are saying there's no climate change, better take another look.
Right. Thank you so much for your support. I think if there was one next step forward is to work with the Sustainability and Utilities Committee. They are very interested in pursuing projects addressing the very communities that we are working with. And so it would probably be to see how we can implement this into real actionable change. But secondly, I need to say that we need to increase awareness about the issues that are currently happening to these communities. And so in order to gather more data, we need to publish and increase awareness about the work that we're currently doing.
Thank you. Commissioner Krause?
Well, thank you. You've done an enormous amount of work, and it's a great starting point. And like Commissioner Savage, where do you want to be first? And what are you going to be diving off into?
Right.
But if I could, you've divided into the unhoused, the renters, small business, seniors, disabilities, and outdoor workers. And I'd love to know you're thinking about how you included outdoor workers, because we don't have, the fields are not in Palo Alto, but I think the fields are many other places, and that workers are getting the brunt of climate change without a lot of remediation. So there's some unhoused resources that Minka or I can lead you to, such as Life Moves. If you're going to be trying to understand the unhoused, they become our largest supplier of services. And there's a center right up by the car wash called the Opportunity Center. So ask and you shall receive. We're happy to help you in any way, shape, or form. And if the, what's it called, the business commerce,
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, I know I can make a phone call for you if they didn't take your phone call. So when you're ready, please come. This is an enormous undertaking, and this is one of the most critical issues going forward, period. things are not reversible right now. We have typhoons, we have hurricanes. We have such unusual climate in all parts of the world, as evidenced by Maui. And we have to begin to stop it. So comments, questions, let me know how I can help you. I'm happy to.
All right, yes, thank you so much. And before we go on to the next phase of our project, we'd like to finish up some more interviews. I think Minka and I connected on when a person for life moves, but I'll send an email asking for specific people that we want to get in contact with.
I'm happy to tell you who you should go to,
Okay,
which he'll be eager to talk with you. Philip Dahl
all right,
at the Opportunity Center. This is his life's work.
okay,
Okay?
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Krause, Commissioner Shea?
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for making this presentation. It was really compelling. It was interesting and you're very well spoken. So really enjoyed it. I'm interested, I know this is a group project, but I am interested in the discovery process and just if you could share what you took away from this discovery process. What were some of the challenges? What do you think was successful? And what did you learn from this first part of this process? And then what might you change for the remainder of your research?
Sure. I can start with what I learned. My specific community was the unhoused, and setting up those interviews and seeing the disparities within the systems that a wealthy community like Palo Alto provides was very startling to me. And then the challenges was definitely getting in contact with people. I think it might be, kind of demotivating to kind of continue to reach out to people without responses. But if we were to change something, it would be to find alternate research where we can base our conclusions on. I think we depended on face-to-face interviews, and we could have, I think, also supplemented our conclusions with outside research.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stimler?
I'll just agree with everyone who said that this is tremendous work, and thank you so much for providing it. The other thing, just among us commissioners as well, I was thinking is that this is really an interesting way to intersect with a lot of the other work that the commission is doing. So for example, as we have listening sessions throughout the end of the year and into next year, thinking through like asking and addressing how climate change are affecting many of the other populations that we're addressing as well. And I think you've really equipped us well with sort of the starting point for some of those conversations. So thank you so much for doing that.
No problem.
Thank you. Again, Angelina, you are very well spoken and you did a great job. And, I appreciate you stepping up for your whole group too. I know that's never easy, and you did it really well. Now, I think, first of all, that I know you're working with an ad hoc committee from the HRC.
Yes.
And I think in order to make some of your connections, that maybe you guys can lean into those members, and then they can call some people, and that might lead them to call back maybe a little bit more often. So don't hesitate to use your partners from the HRC to make those interviews happen. One thing, Commissioner Krause made a comment about the outdoor workers, and I believe what some of the outdoor workers that we do have in Palo Alto are the gardeners or the construction workers, anybody who works outside. And though it would be really interesting to go talk to some of them, see what they're provided, if anything, or maybe what the city could do to help them with protective gear, or, maybe the city can have their own ordinances of when you're doing gardening work in the city. And, I'm not the city attorney, so I don't know how this would work, but what kind of breaks, or does water need to be provided? Yes.
Yeah.
I know that I just did some work in my house outside, and the foreman always brought tons of waters, and there were shaded areas for them, to take breaks in. And I know that they also started working, as early as they could before it got too hot, and took a break during the hottest part of the day. So it'd be interesting to gather information on, what would be helpful and how the city can help make sure that that's happening with the work zones that are happening in the city. The other thing that I wanted to bring up from what you said that I thought was interesting is you talked to the seniors and you mentioned transportation and being afraid to drive and being afraid to walk outside. I thought another thing that maybe you could explore would be transportation to cooling centers or to somewhere where they could safely walk, like to the Stanford Mall. I have no idea what the city would be willing to provide or could provide, but it's something to think about because it's going to be needed more and more. So maybe bringing back the shuttle.
Yeah, this actually, transportation came up within the unhoused community as well, because though there aren't a plethora of shelters in Palo Alto, there are in surrounding communities, but transportation to those shelters is hard for some people to find. And so if we explore that, that would also be helpful to that community.
Great. Yeah, and I think you're on the right track that, you know that you need to do more interviews and you're hoping that people will get back to you. I would love to see more interviews with businesses that are here in Palo
Right.
Alto. I think that would be super helpful. And we would love to have you, like you said, that this is a progress report. Have you come back in a few months after you try to make some more of those connections, gather data, and maybe even more, concrete steps of what the city can do to help these communities. And again, with what's going on Maui, it's extremely timely, and Maui is a stark reminder that this is happening more and more often. I mean, we've gone through heat waves, we've gone through fire season, we've gone through floods. So it's definitely something that the city has to work towards. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I had one question from the team that I wanted to forward to you.
Yes.
So you mentioned leaning to the HRC ad hoc for contacts, but in between those months, how would the HRC like to be kind of connected to the project outside of the progress reports?
So because of the Brown Act, you guys can always meet with your ad hoc members,
Right.
and then they can report to the HRC. When they do their commissioner reports, they can update us on what's going on.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could just see if there's any public comment.
I was just going to say, do we need to do public comment for the agenda item AA4? Because we never did.
Theoretically, yes. So we can,
Should we do that first? Let's go back to agenda item AA4, and that was the HRC support for the multi-faith peace picnic and prayer service. Are there any public comments on that item?
oh, let me look online.
Thank you.
If anybody online wants to give public comment on item AA4, please raise your hand now. I don't see any hands, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. So then we'll move on to business item number 2. the Frontline Communities Report and see if there's any public comment on that agenda item.
I have one online from Katie Roof, which is a member of the committee. So I'm going to give Katie 3 minutes. So Katie, welcome, and go ahead, please.
Hi, this is going to take literally 30 seconds. I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for listening to the presentation. And Angelina, thank you so much for being able to present. We're all over the place right now, so it's really exciting that Angelina was able to be here in person and share this with you guys. So thank you so much for your support. And I was able to tune in. My flight landed just in time. Thank you guys so much. That was all.
Thank you. I think we have one public comment in person. Ms. French.
Good evening. I was moved by the young lady, new generation, and being able to identify some of the concerns. So I just discovered that I'm a senior. My aunt, who's 97, I won 97, 98, 97 and 99, we're called advanced adults. So what I discovered is that, whoa, we are dismissed. I'm not ready for that, but it is very difficult. So I want to key on one thing that was said, and this is the most important thing, and that is the difficulty in navigating nonprofit legal resources and available programs. You know, oh, just go to so-and-so, and you go there and, you know, you're not the right profile. So one of the things I wanted to suggest, and that's in a lot of arenas, if we're really interested in making change, is that if there's any way you can put yourself in that service position, I don't know how old people are, but there was 2 books. One was Black Like Me, and that was way back in the day. And then there was another one that maybe 20 years later. So that's what I think of, but more so in terms of, and that's in terms of me as an African American, but I was riding in the paratransit. Horrible. I mean, I was like on a stagecoach. I mean, literally, you know, yeah, my back in general, I don't claim stuff. So my back in general might hurt, but it was like, you know, so I'm thinking, I got to contact the head of this person because they're not going to believe it. They have to get in there and ride on the road. I don't know what's happening there, you know, but in some of these things, it's like we are dismissed like we're little children and we do not know anything. You know, like the young lady said, the person like pat on the head, you know, and so I think that if you all and, you know, the people who are in charge could be in the service position, there would be more services for seniors. And there's certain things that they don't understand. I'm going to give you an example. So with the blackout, this is 3 minutes, where were we? 19, okay. In the blackout, our building, I'm on the 4th floor. So our building lost power and there's no generator. So 55 steps down, 55 steps up. But even more important than that, and that was really important because, you know, up and down there all the time. There was no locks, you know, the hub, whatever you call that, the bob thing didn't work because there's no electricity. So our doors literally had to be left, the downstairs doors had to be left open and, you know, the gate that you go in. And so they said, well, this building is for active seniors. So did anybody study anything about gerontology? As a senior, you can be up and moving around today, the next 4 or 5 hours, oh, my hip. Oh, where did that knee pain come from? So that's foolish. So we need some assistance and some understanding. And a lot of times you cannot understand until you kind of either know someone that personally experienced it or you yourself. So that's my great idea. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I don't see any more hands online.
Okay, so let's move on to our updates on the 2023-2024 HRC work plan items. We'll start with Commissioner Savage.
Well, I have one thing. Commissioner Causey and I will be meeting with the police department later this month to discuss current crime trends, hiring, issues of the day, and we'll be able to report back with commissioner reports at the following meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Krause?
Commissioner Mary Kate has made enormous progress on our joint work on seniors. And I'd like to defer to her to give the overview. Regarding our COVID work with Commissioner, do I want to say it right? Did I do it right?
O'Shea?
Shay, darn. Shay, we've yet to make the outreach, but we will be working on that going forward. On the renters and the topic, Vice Chair Everly has done the new draft and handed it to me for the second draft. And we're collaborating on that going forward. And that's my report to date.
Thank you. Commissioner Shea?
Yes, I have an upcoming meeting on August 29th with Mary Gloner from Project Safety Net, and we have a 1-hour meeting set up. And then for our AA and HPI survey subcommittee, we are meeting next week to review the survey results and to plan a path forward for a follow-up report.
Thank you. Commissioner Stimler?
Yes, so I have been working on putting together listening sessions with our elderly community. And I think we'll likely have one potentially in the next meeting from Avanitas. They have done a tremendous amount of listening through a comprehensive survey of Palo Alto seniors that they'd like to come in and share with us, as well as a panel this fall with several community organizations, including hopefully La Comida, the JCC, the Santa Clara County Senior Nutritional Programs. I'm definitely forgetting some Linton Gardens, and there's definitely one more, but anyway, they will be confirming and joining us soon to discuss the needs of our elderly. And I'll also, I think Commissioner Savage was also with on a phone call with the RV dwellers as well. Sorry, Kraus, sorry, you were, yeah, sorry. Commissioner Kraus, I was looking at Commissioner Savage as I said it. And there is a work stream there around the broadening of El Camino Real, which will result in the loss of the parking on that street for the replacement of a bike lane. And that will be a tremendous need for the RV dwellers in our community. So that is another work stream that is catching speed as we move towards next summer when that change will happen.
Thank you. I think my partners have given updates on some of the things that I've been working on. Commissioner Krause mentioned the rental report that I worked on, and we're going to keep on working on moving forward. And Commissioner Shea and I did have one meeting on the AA and HPI survey results, and we've gone over the results once, but we're set to meet with our new commissioner member now, Commissioner Stimler, next week. And Commissioner Causey and I still need to meet on the Midtown plans, which are also timely right now, as a lot of stuff is going on in Midtown. With Mike's Diner being evicted, and I know I saw something on the news about bills and fills that I need to follow up on. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think that's it. I don't think, well, let's open up for public comment then. Those are the updates on the work plan. Do we have any public comments?
I don't believe so, Vice Chair.
Thank you. All right, our next, so now we would go to commissioner reports unless someone else, any of the commissioners has something else to say. We'll move on to council liaison report. Our council liaison could not be here tonight. So Minka, it's you, staff liaison report.
It is me. I just wanted to give an update on a couple things. So as of this point, the HRC still has 2 items on the action agenda for the council. Always as we get closer, things might get bumped or pulled off for another night. But the one thing is the HISRAP contingency plan. So that is the council asked to approve the plan for the distribution of the additional $200,000 in HISRAP funding. So they approved as part of the fiscal year 24 city budget, the HISRAP allocations that were already in the budget book. But then with the extra 200,000, they wanted to see those specific distributions themselves. So that is hopefully going to happen on the 11th. The other thing that is still on the agenda is the what we call the holiday report. That was the review of the HRC on the consideration of different dates to advance equity in the community. That was your conversation on Columbus Day and Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez and Armenian Independence Day. No, the Armenian recognition of the Armenian genocide and Holocaust Remembrance Day. So that is at this point going on the 11th. So that is really the update I had. I did work with Commissioner Kraus and Commissioner Shea on the request for proposals for the HISRAP Human Services Needs Assessment. And that should be going out any day now. So that is looking for a contractor to help us in doing an assessment of local needs and see how the HISRAP program intersects with being able to address those needs. So that is something that should be happening soon as well. So are there any questions?
Commissioner Kraus.
With the additional allocation of $200,000 for HISRAP, we had a plan and we had NGOs identified. Is that what's been submitted to council, or are we having another discussion before that happens?
It is that plan.
Okay.
I will say that since that that vote by the HRC, 2 of the HISRAP grantees have let us know that they aren't able to accept their grants for various reasons. So staff has followed its normal protocol in distributing those funds that were made available on a proportional, using a proportional method to those that did not already have their full allocation. So what this council will see is what you all decided and a reallocation of those 2 grants that were not able to be accepted by the grantee.
Could I, at your convenience, be briefed on that or see what that meant?
Yes, we are waiting some word about from another city department on it, but once we have word on that, you're more than welcome to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, which 2 opted out?
Oh, the two that opted out were PARA, Palo Alto Rental Association. Their
Okay.
executive director
Right.
is going to graduate school.
Right.
So they weren't able to do it. And then Cassie, Counseling and Support Services for Youth, they this year were only going to possibly have the contract for providing mental health services at the high school. And they have heard that from the district that they were able to find enough in-house counselors. So they will not be using the services of Cassie this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Minka. Are there any questions or comments from anyone? Minka, do you want to let us know what's going to be on the agenda for next meeting? What we have on the agenda so far?
What I have so far is the planning department will be coming with the CAPER report. So that is part of the community block development program, CDBG. And they are required to turn in a type of status report to HUD, Housing and Urban Development, on an annual basis. So they bring that report to the HRC just for your review and your ability to answer any questions. So that is currently on the agenda. Whatever aspect of the senior listening session is ready for prime time, that will be on it as well. So those are the two items that I currently have. We will also check with the chair. There are some things that are kind of brewing, but they're not really ready to go to the HRC or may not go to the HRC. So at this point, those are the two items that I have. I would say to the commissioners, if there are items that you are currently working on that you would like to have considered for the next agenda or future topics, what I say for the benefit of the new members, if you want to bring something to the agenda and it's not already on the work plan, it takes at least 2 members to be able to put something on the agenda. And then there's work behind the scenes that says, well, what needs to be done next? Does a report need to be done next? Does a speakers need to be had for something next? So you can, suggest an item for a future agenda, and then the work happens to, when it would be good for that to be heard. So that's just, a reminder for new folks how things get on the agenda.
Minka, can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
To the public comment today about the reparations report, I was curious if the other commissioners would be interested in having someone come to discuss the California reparations report. Oh, sorry. I was saying that would we be interested as commissioners in hearing some kind of summary report or having someone come to speak to the reparations report that the public comment referenced earlier? It sounds like that there might be some local folks who are working on that report, so it might be useful for us to hear.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will put that down and we can go from there.
I believe they gave us, well, they might have been in touch anyway about their public comment.
I
Okay.
have contact information.
Great. I know we've talked in the past about working with East Palo Alto more closely on some issues, so this is a great opportunity to do that, especially with the history between the two cities. So. All right.
And it's the next meeting on the 14th or the 7th?
Whatever the second Tuesday is. Thursday, sorry. See?
So
I
yes,
have a
should be the 14th.
conflict on the 14th in which I'm being called to DC.
Yeah, it's the 14th. No,
What?
it's the 14th.
Yeah. Is there any possibility of moving that?
Usually if it's just one member, we don't really move a meeting. It's usually I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but
No, I'm just.
it's usually that's a conversation that is, held internally to see if we would still have a
You can
quorum and
decide.
all those type of things. Yes.
I figured I'd
You
make
you
it
can still
known.
join if you're willing to have your hotel room listed on the agenda.
No, I'm in meetings, 24 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where I'm going. I can't do it. Or I would. Come on down.
All right, thank you. Anything else before we adjourn? All right, it is 7:21 and we are adjourned for tonight.